The Horizon station hung in Earth's orbit, like a gleaming silver tear. Through its observation dome, the dying sun cast weak, reddish light across polished control panels. Dr. Mira Calhoun pressed her palm against the cool glass, studying the celestial body that had sustained life for billions of years and was now fading into cosmic twilight. Recording session 2473, she spoke into her data tablet. Solar output continues its predicted decline. Radiation levels at 27% of historical norms. Core fusion estimated at critical minimum. Mira's voice remained steady, professional, the voice of Earth's chief astrophysicist. But her reflection in the glass betrayed what the rest of humanity felt. Grief. The sun was dying, and Earth mourned. The Great Silence had begun 50 years ago, when the first unmistakable signs appeared. Scientists had always known the sun would eventually fade, but the process had accelerated beyond all predictions. Now, civilization existed in perpetual twilight, beneath skies that grew darker with each passing year. Mira turned as Jonas Vega, her communications engineer, entered the observation dome. His dark eyes were ringed with fatigue, but he managed a small smile. "The latest data transfer completed," he said, handing her a holographic display. "Beijing Observatory confirmed receipt. They're adding it to the archive." The archive, humanity's grand project to record every last flicker and flare of their dying star. As if documenting death could somehow make it more bearable. "Thank you, Jonas." Mira scrolled through the figures, each one telling the same story. Entropy winning, light fading, hope diminishing. Jonas lingered, his gaze drifting to the viewport. "My grandmother joined a farewell circle yesterday," he said quietly. 20,000 people standing in concentric rings in Central Park, holding candles, singing to the sun. Mira nodded. The grief rituals had become a global phenomenon, gatherings where people said goodbye to the light that had nurtured all terrestrial life. Some were solemn scientific affairs, while others took on religious overtones. Humanity, processing cosmic loss in whatever way made sense. "Did you attend?" she asked. "No," Jonas shook his head. "I'd rather be here, doing something, even if it's just witnessing." Mira understood. The abandoned observatories around the world had been repurposed as temples, concert halls, or government facilities. Only a handful still operated, staffed by scientists who insisted on documenting the end, witnesses to extinction. "The dark matter scan is scheduled for 0600 tomorrow," she reminded him. "We should both get some rest." Jonas nodded and left. But Mira remained, her eyes fixed on the dimming star. In the 50 years since the Great Silence began, she had watched nations unite, then fracture, seen hope rise and fall, observed humanity's finest and worst moments in the face of cosmic mortality. And through it all, the sky had remained silent. Until tomorrow. The station's alarm jolted Mira from sleep. Red emergency lights pulsed along the corridor as she rushed toward the observation dome, still pulling on her uniform jacket. "Status report," she demanded as she entered. The dome was chaos, technicians running between stations, screens flashing with anomalous readings. "It started during the dark matter scan," Jonas called from his communications array. "The instruments picked up something, patterns in the stratosphere that shouldn't be there." Mira pushed through to the main console, eyes scanning the readings. "Show me." The holographic display expanded above the console, showing Earth's atmosphere in layers. And there, in the stratosphere, were strange pixelated shapes moving across the sky, formations unlike anything natural. "What am I looking at?" Mira whispered. "Unknown," said the young technician beside her. The patterns appeared simultaneously over major population centers. Sydney first, then Tokyo, Moscow, London, New York, following the daylight line. "Natural phenomenon?" "Impossible. They're maintaining formation against wind currents, and they're growing. As if on cue, the communication system erupted with incoming transmissions. Jonas worked frantically at his station. "We're getting calls from every observatory, military installation, and government office on the planet," he reported. "They're all seeing it." Mira stared at the display, watching the pixelated shapes expand and connect, forming larger patterns that moved with purpose. "Send our data to the Global Science Council immediately, and get me a direct line to—" The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in seconds later, but the communications array remained dark. "We've lost all systems," Jonas reported, working furiously at his console. "Wait, it's not just us. I'm picking up emergency frequencies. This is global. Every satellite, every digital communications network, everything just went black." Mira felt a chill creep up her spine as she looked back at the viewport. Below them, Earth was experiencing a rolling blackout, unlike anything in human history. But that wasn't what made her breath catch in her throat. It was the sky itself. The pixelated patterns had coalesced, forming massive, translucent shapes that hovered over cities. Shapes that, even from orbit, were unmistakably humanoid, giant figures of light suspended in the atmosphere. "The sky," she whispered. "The sky is turning human." Chaos reigned in the emergency session of the Global Security Council. Representatives from 12 nations shouted over one another as grainy footage of the sky beings played on screens around the chamber. Mira stood silently at the podium, waiting for order that seemed unlikely to come. "Enough!" The voice of Ambassador Celine cut through the din. The tall, silver-haired diplomat rose from her seat. "We have the world's foremost astrophysicist before us. Perhaps we should listen before we continue to embarrass ourselves with speculation." The chamber quieted. All eyes turned to Mira, who nodded gratefully to Celine before addressing the council. 48 hours ago, my team at Horizon Station detected anomalous patterns forming in Earth's stratosphere," she began. "These patterns have since developed into what we are provisionally calling atmospheric entities or sky beings. They appear to be composed primarily of ionized particles, manipulated light, and other atmospheric elements we haven't yet identified." "Are they hostile?" demanded the Russian representative. "Unknown. They have made no aggressive moves, but they are directly responsible for the global communications blackout. Our working theory is that they're generating some form of electromagnetic interference that disrupts our technology." "Have they attempted communication?" asked Celine. Mira hesitated. "Yes and no. They emit harmonics, sound patterns that don't match any known language, but demonstrate clear mathematical structure. We're working to decode these patterns now." General Victor Anders, head of the United Earth Defense Force, stepped forward. His imposing figure, clad in the midnight blue uniform adorned with combat medals, commanded attention. "With all due respect, Dr. Calhoun," he said, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. "We are dealing with an invasion. These entities appeared without warning, disabled our global defense systems, and now hover over our major population centers. The time for scientific curiosity has passed. We must respond with force." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Mira felt her jaw tighten. "General, we have no evidence these beings intend harm. Attacking an unknown entity could provoke the very conflict you're hoping to prevent. And waiting could give them time to strike first," Anders countered. "I've mobilized our remaining operational units. We can launch a coordinated attack within 24 hours. "That would be a catastrophic mistake," Mira said firmly. "Give my team time to decode their harmonics. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done so already." The Chinese representative stood. "Dr. Calhoun, reports are coming in of civilian gatherings beneath these sky beings. Religious groups calling them Sky Kin. Saviors come to rescue us from our dying sun. How do you explain this?" Mira sighed. "Mass hysteria is a common response to unprecedented phenomena. People seek meaning in the unknown. Or perhaps they sense something our instruments cannot measure, the representative replied. Ambassador Celine intervened before the discussion could derail further. I propose a compromise. Dr. Calhoun's team will have 72 hours to establish meaningful communication with these entities. General Anders will continue preparations, but will take no offensive action during this period. Is this acceptable? After a tense silence, both Mira and Anders nodded reluctantly. Very well, said Celine. Dr. Calhoun, the world is watching. Make those hours count. As the council adjourned, Mira caught Anders's cold stare from across the chamber. She knew the general saw only a threat in the sky beings, and perhaps he was right. But something deep within her sensed there was more to their appearance than conquest. A dying sun, a grieving earth, and now entities of light appearing in their darkest hour. It couldn't be coincidence. The Skykin congregation had swelled to over 50,000 by the time Mira arrived at Central Park. People of all ages and backgrounds stood beneath the massive, shimmering figure that hovered above Manhattan. The being's form was vaguely humanoid, a torso, limbs, and a head-like structure, but composed entirely of shifting light patterns that reminded Mira of solar flares. "Make way for Dr. Calhoun," Jonas called, helping her navigate through the crowd. They had set up a mobile research station at the park center, directly beneath the sky being. A woman in flowing white robes approached as they reached the equipment. "Dr. Calhoun," she said, her eyes bright with fervor. "Have you come to join our communion with the Skykin?" "I've come to study them," Mira replied carefully. "To understand why they're here." The woman smiled. "They're here to save us, of course. As our sun dies, they bring new light. They're the sun's children, returned to embrace their orphaned siblings." Mira exchanged glances with Jonas. Religious interpretations had spread rapidly, with the Skykin congregation being the largest movement. Their theology, hastily assembled in the mere days since the being's appearance, cast the entities as cosmic saviors. "Your faith is noted," Mira said diplomatically. "Would you mind giving us space to work? Your cooperation would help us communicate with them." Surprisingly, the woman nodded. "Of course. They speak to us through feeling. But you seek their words. Both paths lead to understanding." She retreated, instructing her followers to give the scientists room. Jonas began unpacking sophisticated audio equipment. "The harmonics are strongest here, directly beneath them. If we can isolate the pattern—" Mira nodded, but her attention was caught by something strange. The sky being above them was changing. Its form seemed to be descending, stretching downward toward their position. "Jonas," she said quietly, "look up." The crowd noticed too. A hush fell over the thousands gathered as the being's lower portion elongated, reaching toward the earth like a tendril of light. People backed away in alarm, but Mira stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding caution. The tendril stopped about 20 feet above the ground. Then, to the astonishment of all watching, it began to take form, shaping itself into a more defined humanoid figure, smaller but more detailed than the massive entity above. "It's creating an avatar," Jonas whispered, hastily adjusting his instruments to record the phenomenon. The light solidified into a being about 7 feet tall, hovering just above the ground. It was semi-transparent, its body composed of swirling patterns of light that mimicked human anatomy while remaining distinctly alien. Its face had no features, just a smooth surface that rippled like the surface of the sun. Complete silence fell over the park as the being's feet touched the ground. It stood before Mira, towering over her, radiant energy emanating from its form. Then, it spoke, not with a voice, but with harmonics that resonated through the air, vibrating at frequencies that made Mira's bones hum. The crowd gasped collectively. Some fell to their knees. Others backed away in terror. Mira remained rooted in place, overwhelmed by the sensation of the being's communication washing through her. Jonas, his hands shaking, adjusted his equipment. "I'm recording it. The pattern is. It's like nothing I've ever heard." The sky being tilted its featureless head, studying Mira. It raised a hand, a gesture so human it sent chills down her spine, and pointed first to her, then to itself, then upward to the dying sun. "I think," Mira said, her voice barely above a whisper, "it's trying to tell us something about the sun." The being emitted another series of harmonics, more complex than before. This time, Mira felt a distinct emotion accompanying the sounds. Urgency. "Whatever it's saying," she told Jonas, "it needs us to understand quickly." Before Jonas could respond, the sound of helicopters shattered the moment. Military aircraft appeared over the park's perimeter, their spotlights fixing on the sky being's avatar. "This is General Anders of the United Earth Defense Force," boomed a voice over loudspeakers. "Step away from the entity. This area is now under military control." The sky being's avatar looked up at the helicopters. Its body pulsed with rapidly changing patterns. Agitation, Mira thought. The massive entity above seemed to respond, its own patterns shifting more rapidly. "No, no, no," Mira muttered. She grabbed the nearest communication device, a megaphone from their equipment. "General Anders, stand down. We were establishing contact." But soldiers were already rappelling from the helicopters, forming a perimeter around the research station. The crowd began to panic, people pushing and shoving to escape. The sky being's avatar began to rise off the ground, its form becoming less stable as it retreated toward its larger self. The harmonics it emitted changed tone, becoming what Mira could only interpret as distressed. "Wait," she called to it. "Please, we want to understand." But the avatar dissolved back into the larger entity. Above Manhattan, the sky being's patterns became erratic, pulsing with what seemed like agitation. General Anders approached, flanked by armed soldiers. "Dr. Calhoun," he said grimly, "you've had your chance at diplomacy. These entities have disrupted global communications, created mass hysteria, and refused to state their intentions clearly. The Security Council has authorized me to take more direct measures." "You're making a terrible mistake," Mira said, anger rising in her voice. "They were communicating. We just need time to understand their language." "Time is a luxury we don't have," Anders replied. "Our satellites have detected energy buildups within these entities, possible weapons preparing to deploy. I won't wait until they strike first." "That's speculation. There's no evidence they're hostile." Anders' expression hardened. "I've seen this before, Doctor. An unknown force appears, creates confusion, divides our response. It's textbook infiltration tactics." "They're not military invaders," Mira insisted. "There's something else entirely. Something connected to our sun." "Your obsession with the sun is clouding your judgment," Anders said dismissively. "You have 12 hours to pack up your equipment and return to Horizon Station. After that, this becomes a military operation." As Anders walked away, Jonas approached Mira, his face pale. "What do we do now?" Mira looked up at the sky being, still pulsing with agitated light patterns. "We do what scientists have always done, Jonas. We work faster than anyone thinks possible." Back at Horizon Station, Mira's team worked frantically to analyze the harmonic patterns recorded in Central Park. The observation dome had been converted into a makeshift audio lab, with equipment borrowed from linguistics departments around the world. "The pattern repeats every 8.3 minutes, said Jonas, pointing to the waveform displayed across the main screen. "But with slight variations each time, like verses in a song." "Or paragraphs in a speech," suggested Lena Chen, the xenolinguist Mira had recruited. The young woman had studied theoretical alien communication patterns for years, work that had been considered purely academic until now. The mathematical structure is undeniable. Lena continued. Prime numbers, Fibonacci sequences. These aren't random sounds. They're constructed with deliberate complexity. Mira paced the length of the dome, her mind racing. But complexity doesn't equal meaning. We need to find a translation key, something that bridges their communication method to ours. What if it's not just sound? Jonas suggested. The being pointed at you, itself, and then the sun. Context matters in any language. Mira stopped pacing. The sun, she repeated. They appeared after the sun began dying. What if that's not coincidence? What if they're connected to it somehow? She turned to the nearest console and pulled up the solar data archives. Show me the solar harmonic readings from the past 50 years. Solar harmonics? Jonas looked confused. The sun produces sound waves, vibrations that travel through its plasma. We can't hear them in space, but we can detect and translate them into audible frequencies. We've been recording them since before the Great Silence began. The computer displayed a complex waveform, the voice of the sun translated into sound. Now overlay the sky being's harmonic pattern, Mira instructed. As the two waveforms appeared side by side, the team fell silent. The patterns weren't identical, but the structural similarities were unmistakable. They're speaking in the sun's language, Lena whispered. Not exactly, Mira said, her heart racing. The sun's harmonics are naturally occurring plasma vibrations. The sky beings are using a constructed language based on those patterns, like they've developed a formal version of a natural phenomenon. Jonas looked at her with widening eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying, Mira replied slowly, that these beings aren't invaders from another world. They're something that evolved from, or was shaped by, our sun itself. A chime from the communication system interrupted the moment. Ambassador Celine's face appeared on the screen. Dr. Calhoun, she said, her expression grave. General Anders has convinced the Security Council to authorize a military strike against the sky beings. A fleet of atmospheric fighters will launch in 6 hours. Mira's blood ran cold. Ambassador, you have to stop them. We've made a breakthrough. The sky beings communicate using patterns based on solar harmonics. They're connected to our sun somehow. Connected how? I don't know yet. But attacking them would be like shooting at a message we haven't finished reading. Celine looked troubled. Anders has presented evidence that the beings are generating increasing energy levels. He believes they're preparing to attack. Or they're trying harder to communicate because they sense our hostility, Mira countered. Ambassador, I need more time. The decision has been made, Celine said regretfully. Unless you can provide concrete proof of their peaceful intentions, the strike will proceed as planned. The connection terminated, leaving Mira staring at a blank screen. 6 hours, Jonas said quietly. What can we possibly do in 6 hours? Mira turned to her team, determination hardening her features. We're going to establish communication, and we're going to broadcast it to the entire world. General Anders inspected the squadron of atmospheric fighters, sleek, black craft designed to operate in Earth's upper atmosphere. Each was armed with experimental ion disruptor weapons, theoretically capable of destabilizing the sky being's form. Final systems check complete, sir, reported his second-in-command. All squadrons report ready for deployment. Anders nodded, satisfaction evident in his stern features. Coordinate with global defense forces. I want simultaneous strikes on all entities the moment we receive authorization. Sir, the officer hesitated. There's something you should know. Dr. Calhoun has set up a global broadcast. She's attempting to communicate with the entities in real time. Anders' expression darkened. On whose authority? Ambassador Celine approved it. The broadcast begins in 30 minutes. Cursing under his breath, Anders strode toward the command center. The scientist was becoming a liability, her fascination with these entities blinding her to the threat they posed. He had seen too many good people die from hesitation, from the naive belief that unknown forces came in peace. In the command center, screens displayed news feeds from around the world. All showed the same image: sky beings hovering over major cities, their forms pulsing with increasingly rapid patterns. Energy readings continue to climb, sir, reported an analyst. Whatever they're preparing, it's accelerating. Time to launch? Anders asked. Strike authorization in 40 minutes, sir. Anders clenched his jaw. After Mira's broadcast, no doubt. Politics always interfered with security. Prepare the squadrons, he ordered. The moment we receive authorization, I want those things destroyed. The Global Broadcast Center in Geneva had been hastily converted to accommodate Mira's equipment. Massive screens displayed the sky being hovering above the city, while smaller monitors showed similar entities around the world, all pulsing with the same urgent patterns. We're live in 2 minutes, Jonas informed her, adjusting the final connections on their hastily assembled translator device. Are you sure this will work? Mira checked the settings one last time. The translator converts our voice into harmonic patterns, matching the solar structure. It won't be perfect, but it might be close enough for them to recognize as communication. Ambassador Celine approached, looking anxious. The Security Council is watching. Dr. Calhoun. General Anders still has authorization to launch his attack if this fails. It won't fail, Mira said with more confidence than she felt. And tell the Council to look at the sky beings' behavior. Have they made a single aggressive move? They're trying to tell us something, not harm us. 30 seconds to broadcast, called the director. Mira took her position before the camera. The translator device hummed beside her, ready to convert her words into solar harmonics. Behind her, a massive window offered a view of the sky being hovering above Geneva, its light pulsing in complex patterns. Live in 543? The red light on the camera blinked on. Billions of people around the world, huddled in their homes beneath the watchful presence of the sky beings, were now watching. My name is Dr. Mira Calhoun, she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I am speaking to the entities we have called sky beings. We wish to communicate. The translator beside her converted her words into harmonics that filled the broadcast center with strange, resonant tones. Outside, the sky beings' patterns changed, becoming slower, more regular. It's responding, Jonas whispered from behind the camera. Encouraged, Mira continued. We recognize that your communication patterns share structural similarities with solar harmonics. Are you connected to our sun? Again. The translator converted her words. This time, the sky being's response was dramatic. Its entire form shifted, compressing then, expanding in a pulse of brilliance that momentarily outshone the dim sunlight. From its center, a tendril of light extended downward, just as had happened in Central Park. Gasps echoed through the broadcast center as the tendril formed into a humanoid avatar that descended until it hovered just outside the window. Its featureless face turned toward Mira, and it emitted a complex series of harmonics. The translator struggled to process the response, producing a stilted, mechanical voice. Recognition, communication, established. Mira's heart leaped. You understand us? Understand, yes. Difficult, your language primitive. Behind her, she heard Celine whisper into her communicator. Tell the Council we have confirmation of intelligence. Request immediate hold on military action. Mira focused on the avatar. Why have you come to Earth? What do you want? The avatar raised its hands, a gesture somehow both alien and deeply familiar. The harmonics it produced became more complex, straining the translator's capacity. We are guardians, children, messengers of solar consciousness. Solar consciousness? Mira repeated, struggling to understand. Are you saying the sun is conscious? All stars, conscious. Different from your consciousness. Collective. dispersed. The implications staggered Mira. You're saying our sun has a form of consciousness, and you represent that consciousness? We are. Fragments. When star dies, consciousness fragments, seeks, connection. A sudden understanding dawned on Mira. You're the consciousness of our dying sun, she said slowly. You've taken form to communicate with us. The avatar pulsed with light, confirmation. Yes, we come. Before end. To help. To plead. Plead? What do you need from us? The avatar's form rippled, its light patterns conveying what Mira somehow sensed was distress. Star death. Premature. Not natural. Caused by consumption. Mira frowned. Consumption? I don't understand. Your species. Harvests. Solar energy. Without return. Balance broken. The realization hit her like a physical blow. For centuries, humanity had deployed increasingly efficient solar collection technology, massive orbital arrays that captured and transmitted the sun's energy to Earth. They had believed they were harvesting only an infinitesimal fraction of the sun's output. But what if they had been wrong? What if the sun's unexpected decline wasn't natural at all, but the result of human technological intervention? Are you saying we caused the sun's premature death? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, but can be reversed. With help. With partnership. Before Mira could respond, alarms blared throughout the broadcast center. On monitors around the room, military aircraft appeared, approaching sky beings around the world. Anders, Mira breathed. He's launching the attack. The avatar's form pulsed rapidly, agitation or alarm. Danger. Weapons. Will destroy. Connection. Mira turned desperately to Celine. Stop them! Tell Anders to stand down! Celine was already shouting into her communicator. This is Ambassador Celine! Override authorization Alpha 93! Stand down immediately! But on the screens, the aircraft continued their approach. Mira turned back to the avatar. Please, you must tell us quickly. How can we help you? How can we save the sun? The avatar's form grew brighter, its harmonics more urgent. The translator struggled to keep pace. Return. Energy. Collected. Create. New balance. Symbiosis. Not. Consumption. You want us to return the energy we've harvested? Mira asked, mind racing. How? Technology. Exists. Redirect. Resonance chambers. Amplify. Solar frequencies. Mira understood. Earth's massive energy reserves, stored in quantum batteries around the world, could theoretically be converted and transmitted back to the sun using modified versions of the very technology that had harvested it. It would require global cooperation on an unprecedented scale, sacrificing much of humanity's energy reserves to save their star. If we do this, she asked, what happens to you, to the solar consciousness? Reintegration, renewal, rebirth, sun, lives, we, guide. On the monitors, the military aircraft were now in firing position. Mira made a decision. She turned to face the camera directly, knowing she was addressing not just the sky being, but the entire world. People of Earth, you've heard this exchange. These beings are not invaders. They are the consciousness of our own sun, fragmented as it nears death. A death we inadvertently caused through our harvesting of solar energy. They've come not to harm us, but to offer a partnership, a chance to restore our star. She took a deep breath, aware of the enormity of what she was proposing. It will require sacrifice. We will need to return much of our stored energy, develop new technologies that create balance rather than consumption. But in exchange, we save our sun, the source of all life on Earth. She turned to look directly at the camera. General Anders, if you're watching, I implore you, stand down. Don't fire on the only beings who can help us save our world. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. The military aircraft remained in position, The sky beings continued their pulsing patterns. The world held its breath. Then, slowly, the aircraft began to turn away. Celine rushed to Mira's side. The Security Council has ordered a full stand-down. They've agreed to hear the sky being's proposal. Relief washed over Mira. She turned back to the Avatar, which had remained patiently hovering outside the window. "We are willing to help," she told it. "We want to save our son and you." The Avatar's form brightened, and the harmonics it produced carried a new quality that the translator struggled to interpret, but that Mira felt in her very core. Hope. Partnership begins. Project. Second Dawn. 1 year later, Mira stood at the observation dome of Horizon Station, watching the most ambitious engineering project in human history unfold. Below, Earth glowed, not just with city lights, but with the blue-white brilliance of thousands of resonance chambers, massive structures that converted stored energy into solar harmonic frequencies and transmitted it toward the sun. Beside her, Jonas monitored the readings with quiet intensity. "Energy transfer at 87% and climbing," he reported. "Core resonance stabilizing." General Anders, now heading the military division of Project Second Dawn, stood on Mira's other side. The past year had changed him, humbled him, perhaps. After the near disaster of his aborted attack, he had thrown himself into protecting the project with the same fervor he had once directed toward destroying the sky beings. "Security teams report all chambers functioning at optimal levels," he stated. "No disruptions or attempts at sabotage." Ambassador Celine completed their small group, her silver hair gleaming in the strengthening sunlight. "The last holdout nations signed the accord this morning," she informed them. "We now have true global participation." Mira nodded, her eyes fixed on the sun. Already, subtle changes were visible, the corona extending further, the color shifting from angry red back toward yellow-white. The sky beings had been right. The premature death had been reversible, though at great cost. Earth had sacrificed nearly 70% of its stored energy reserves. Lifestyle changes had been necessary. Power rationing was still in effect in most regions, but compared to the extinction they had faced, these sacrifices seemed small. "Look," Jonas said suddenly, pointing toward the sun. From the star's surface, wisps of plasma were extending outward, not in the random patterns of solar flares, but in deliberate formations. The sky beings, no longer needed on Earth, were returning to their source. For months, they had guided the construction of the resonance chambers, communicating through increasingly sophisticated translators. They had shared knowledge that advanced human understanding of stellar physics by centuries. And now, as the sun began its recovery, they were going home. "They're reintegrating with the solar consciousness," Mira said softly. "Not all of them," Celine noted, pointing to where a single sky being remained, hovering at the midpoint between Earth and Sun. "Aureus stays, as promised." Aureus, the name they had given to the first sky being to communicate with Mira. It had volunteered to remain as liaison between humanity and the solar consciousness, maintaining the partnership that had saved both. "The atmospheric harmonics are changing," Jonas reported, checking his instruments. I don't know how to describe it. Singing? Indeed. Complex harmonic patterns were emanating from the returning sky beings, patterns that the station's translators interpreted not as words, but as music. A cosmic symphony of gratitude and renewal. "They're rewriting the constellations," Anders observed, his military precision giving way to something like wonder. He was right. As the sky beings merged back into the sun, they left behind traces of their light, not random, but carefully positioned. New patterns appeared in the sky, visible even in daylight. Patterns that human astronomers would later name the resonance, the return, the second dawn. "Earth's grief transformed into guardianship," Mira murmured, remembering the panic and despair of the Great Silence. how far they had come, from mourners to partners in cosmic renewal. Below them, the planet continued its work, pouring energy back into the star that had nurtured it. And above, the sun grew stronger, its consciousness reintegrated, enriched by its interaction with humanity. Mira placed her palm against the cool glass of the observation dome, as she had done so many times before. But now, instead of despair, she felt something new: the warmth of returning light, the promise of continuation. They had thought Earth would grieve quietly, accepting cosmic mortality with dignity. Instead, the sky had turned human, reaching down to forge an unprecedented partnership. And in doing so, both had been transformed. The sun would shine for millennia to come, not as a distant, indifferent star, but as a conscious partner to the world it sustained. And humanity would continue, not as mere consumers of cosmic energy, but as stewards and collaborators in a living universe. Above, Aureus pulsed with light, a sentinel, a promise, a bridge between consciousness. And Earth, no longer alone in its orbit, turned its face toward the renewed light of second dawn.